describe fangirls to me in a few words?
I don't know, I guess fangirls are like really dedicated fans who like engage a lot with like fandom and stuff.
Fangirl, I don't know, someone who's like
Fun, very interested, creative.
Dedicated, obsessed, and passionate.
Loyal, chaotic.
They're just so driven and nearly obsessive. Yeah.
Kind of crazed teen girls. That's like the stereotypical vision of them.
Hi, my name is Yve Blake and I'm a screenwriter. I write film and TV, but I also have written a stage musical called Fangirls.
My name is Dylan Jett and I am an artist.
My name's Anika Luna. I'm your radio gal. I'm really music obsessed. And yeah, do lots in radio.
My experiences with fan culture, it's interesting. I've written an entire musical about fangirls, but I never really was a fangirl as a teenager. And as someone who had never been a fangirl, I became so interested in discovering what I didn't know about them. To me, it was like finding this amazing sovereign nation of teenage girls on the internet. And admittedly, my fascination initially was a morbid curiosity. I thought, this is crazy. Like, look at the ways that they talk to each other and the ways that they're obsessed with this boy band. I really viewed it as this paradigm of young women exclusively competing with each other for the attention of like a male pop idol.
Definitely there is some sort of a stigma. If I had a die-hard fan, it'd be like, oh, that's so sweet. And if I saw they had like 10 mannequins of me and, you know, I don't know how it'd feel.
I think sometimes on a surface level, it could be like an invasion of privacy. With some people, they get really invested in a particular person, and then that kind of investment transcends like their artistry, and it becomes like more invested into like their personal life. And I think that's when it starts kind of crossing some boundaries.
The term fangirl, you think of like a girl watching One Direction going, ah, and stuff like that, but then you think of a guy and he's like, oh yeah, it's really cool that he's like into this music.
Fangirl has that like specific connotation of being a bit like obsessed, psychotic, that kind of idea, whereas like a fanboy, you don't hear of that term.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Why is it that we use different kinds of language to describe that enthusiasm or adoration, devotion, when it's coming from young women versus young men? Why is it? I actually wrote the musical because I had this really interesting experience in my early 20s where I met a 13-year-old girl. She told me very confidently that she'd met the man she was going to marry. And I thought, okay, it's very organized. And she told me confidently that his name was Harry Styles. So of course at that point I laughed at her and she said, don't laugh at me, I love him so much, I would slit someone's throat to be with him. So I began researching at that time, fans of One Direction, it was pre-breakup. But then everything changed because about a month after I interviewed her, Zayn Malik left the band One Direction, a historic event the world never recovered from. Of course, by now, I'd created like a shadow Twitter account and was following hundreds of One Direction fans, and I saw as these young people, who weren't only young women, were experiencing genuine grief and they were devastated. By now I understood he was the only member of the band that wasn't white, he had the highest harmonies, this was devastating, this was gonna ruin everything. And I watched as mainstream news outlets described the reaction of these fans as hysterical and psycho and desperate and over the top and crazy. And I asked myself, would they be using the same selection of adjectives if they were describing an event that had happened in sports and a largely young and male group of fans expressing outrage to that? And I thought to myself, I think they'd probably use words like passionate and loyal and say, that's the love of the game. So that's when I realized that I had so much internalized misogyny about enthusiasm when it was being expressed by like a group of young women. And I thought, that's so interesting. I have been a teenage girl who's been underestimated, and look at me, I'm a woman in her 20s who is now underestimating teenage girls. I need to write about it.
Have you ever been a fangirl?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yes.
I don't think I've really been a fangirl. I've sort of been on like the periphery, like interested in lots of things and like almost a fangirl, but like not quite there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I was a fangirl.
More in my early teens.
Especially younger, so like 13, 14 is when you start to get into fandoms.
I've never personally been a fangirl. I've always sort of liked more alternative things, and it's partly to do with me wanting to be cool and different, but it's also like partly because I just wasn't interested in any of the popular culture sort of stuff. So like One Direction, like Justin Bieber.
I consider myself a fanboy.
Yeah, I'm a fangirl, 100%. I'm a massive like live music person and love just like connecting with people through music and just through, through like that connection that music brings.
When I was a teenager, part of how I wanted to express my maturity is by expressing what I was against and what I didn't like. You know what I mean? I hate that. That's weird. Yeah, that really sucks. And I think that that's a defense mechanism a lot of people use, because if you define yourself in opposition to things, it's protective and defensive. It's a lot more vulnerable to define yourself in alignment with things. And so I think that as we get older, we do become more afraid to say what we love. You know what I mean? Because it's like we understand sophistication as like about what you deny and what you're better than.
And there's kind of a ignorance to it when that person may be like really into this team and they feel like that's kind of their family. They care about what happens to this team, but then it's different when it's an artist.
Look, I've definitely experienced some looks at concerts, gigs, festivals, I'm not gonna lie, because I'm a very like emotive person. I love like expressing myself.
You know, I love Taylor Swift, but if I tell all my guys that I love Taylor Swift, they'll be like, you listen to Taylor Swift? Like, there's a stigma behind it. I remember in like, when I was 13 and 12 and stuff, I got bullied a bit and started high school because I was into acting and drama and really into theatre at the time. And I don't know, that wasn't seen as manly, but then because of that, it wasn't seen as cool. And I don't know, a lot of that is policed.
There's a lot of strife just in terms of like perception and reputation and like you're this kind of person, this is not manly, this is girly, or this is like not the kind of person you're supposed to be because of what you do or like the qualities you possess and just stuff like that.
Yeah, people make fun of like being really engaged with things and like writing fanfic and stuff, and it's like,
I just remember boys be like,
These people are crazy, or these girls are crazy over this, or
They're like, that's sort of weird.
To the extent where I was a perpetrator of that, I don't know, ridicule.
But I think there's like this kind of fear that if you put too much of it into the world, you know that you will be ridiculed. So I kind of kept it more like, it was just personal.
Teenage girls are being yelled at for everything they're not, as opposed to being taught how to appreciate like the miracle of all that they already are. So that's how I feel now. This whole show was me writing about just how wrong I had been about fandoms and how they weren't just a bunch of young women competing with each other for the affections of one male idol. They could be so much more than that, and they could be like incredible queer spaces for young people and people of all ages to like find each other and connect and find like a kind of chosen family.
Creativity is important, but the support of creativity, it creates a community in itself.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Fangirls are important because it's just like you're enjoying yourself, like it lets the artist know that like you're enjoying their set. It's kind of that back and forth. So I think like fangirls, fanboys, fan people, everybody, it's just like they're so important.
Fans make the music.
Without the fans, there is like
Yes.
there wouldn't be, people wouldn't be in jobs, people wouldn't be in music.
It's such an important thing.
I am now a woman in her late 20s who is just completely in awe of teenagers and young people. And I just think anything they do is like amazing and incredible. And I think I wrote Fangirls as like a love letter to my 14-year-old self, because I wish I could kind of go back and tell her like, you're not all that bad, and like you're weird and it's great. and you have so many big thoughts and ideas, and the world is yelling at you to like shut up and figure out how to be hot and cool and like, you know, screw that.